Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in the next minute or so. So I just wanted to say hi and let you know that you've not entered an empty room. We are here. My name's Chris Perks. I'm going to take you through this session and we're going to get started in a minute or so. Hello, Vanina. Apologies if I mispronounce anyone's name. Madhu, hello there. In fact, whilst we're waiting for the rest of our participants to join and waiting for the webinar to start, if you want to find that little chat function, in fact, I should be able to find it, some instructions there for you. If you want to find that chat function in your Zoom menu bar, you can tell us where you're from. You can say hi and say where you're from. Just remember to change that drop-down menu right above where you type into, so it says panelists and attendees. So Madhu, you're just typing to panelists right now, as is Kalina, panelists. So if you can just change that to all panelists and attendees. JP, Cheryl, we've got you. Hi, hi, hi. Haripriya, hello. Vandina's back. Kunal, brilliant. Brilliant. Hi there. Brilliant. Okay, right. We're at 1 o'clock now, so we're going to get started. It's great to see where you're from. Chile, India. I've got a couple from Chile, which is cool. Cheryl's in London. Hello, Cheryl. In fact, Cheryl, right after this session, I'm catching the train from Birmingham International down into London. So, not that that's relevant to you in any way, but Zurich, Singapore, Nigeria. Awesome. Brilliant. Guys, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today for this Jobs to be Done webinar. My name's Chris Perks, and I'm going to take you through this session. I want to start off by apologizing to you in advance. I'm just at the tail end of a cough and maybe a cold or something. So if I do cough throughout the webinar, I do apologize, and I'll try and mute my microphone when I do. But I'll be taking plenty of liquids throughout the session. Okay, so just before we start off, a couple of housekeeping bits. Some simple instructions to find the chat box. You know where to find that in your menu box. I think most of you are using the chat function for me now. If you find it a distraction throughout the session, you can just simply close that down. That's absolutely fine. Try and keep the conversation in the chat box related to what we're talking about. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions actually, and I'm going to want you to give me the answers in that chat box. If you've got any questions for me, you can use the Q&A panel or you can use the chat box. Either way, I keep an eye on both of them when I'm delivering these sessions. And I think that's about it. If you're lucky enough to be at home for this, and you've got people at home that are streaming content or playing Fortnite or downloading stuff or whatever, if you could just ask them to stop for the next 50 minutes or so, give you the best possible chance for a great experience. If you've got any background applications that are running things like Google Drive or Dropbox or Spotify or even mail applications, they can be quite heavy. If you just close those down in the background, that'd be cool. Frees up a little bit of resource for you. So, great. Okay, right. So now we've got the introductory bits out of the way. I can see we're a proper global cohort again today, which is super fun for me. Here's what I'm going to go through with you. Like I say, my name's Chris Perks. I've worked in the digital industry for 16, 17, 18 years, whatever it is now. And primarily focused on digital marketing strategy, digital business strategy, and digital transformation. Those are the kind of three core areas that I major on. I've owned and sold a couple of businesses during that time, and I'm currently managing director of Inspired Thinking Group here in the UK for digital services. Among a few other bits and pieces as well. And I wanted to share some of the frameworks and thoughts and experiences that I've had during that time in relation to an actual framework called the Jobs to be Done framework. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. But whilst I do, could you tell me in that chat box whether you're familiar with the Jobs to be Done framework or not? Have you come across the framework? Have you used the framework before? If you can say yes or no in the little chat box, that'd be great. And then I'll come back to review that in a second. So what we're going to focus on is talking about driving strategy by identifying what job the consumer wants to get done and focusing on it through that lens. I'm going to speak to you for about 15 minutes about milkshake, believe it or not, and what that taught us about focusing on the job to be done, not the products, not the category, not the consumers, not anything, the job the consumer wants to get done. Why focusing on product competition, user claims, market segments isn't always the right sort of place you need to go to find the answers for strategic input. And then we'll talk quite practically at the end. How do we, put performance criteria against this? How do we match what we want to try and do with our consumers' needs, really? And how do we complete these jobs to be done statements so we can all really kind of understand what it is our consumers and our clients want? So I've just had a look through the chat comments, and I can see that none of you are familiar with the jobs to be done framework, which is really good for me because it gives me an opportunity to introduce it to you from the ground up. I'm going to give you plenty of resources as well. So some additional learnings if you want to dig that little bit deeper after this. In all honesty, this is probably one of the most practical frameworks that I've used in my kind of 18 years in business or in industry because it's applicable, it's universally applicable for anybody that's whether you're working in B2B, B2C, even in a D2C kind of environment, a direct-to-consumer environment. No worries, Hemant, no worries at all. It works whether you're in a startup, so a brand new kind of lean startup, struggling with budget and trying to find your place in the world, or whether you're you've established and you're going through some real monumental growth stages, or whether you're an enterprise that's being disrupted by a whole bunch of these young, fresh upstarts. This framework's applicable across the board, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we deploy it, how we use it, and what sort of a difference and an impact it can make when we use it. I will say this from the get-go. When I explain the framework, it's obviously that's simple, and it's a very, very simple framework to understand. Very simple, you get it immediately. It's a complex framework when it comes to application. Right? So I will say that, and I'll give you a couple of guiding points as we go. Okay, so let's jump right on in. Here's another question for you. Why do people buy from you, from your industry, from your agency, from your business, from your consultancy practice, your whatever it is you find yourselves in? Why do people buy from you? You let me know what that is in the chat box. Okay, so Vanina's saying from the story behind the brand. Okay, so you've got an emotive story that your consumers or your customers can get behind. So that's great. Okay, so Hemant's saying there's no other AI or machine learning vendor for suggestions to MRs in pharma. Okay, so you have a unique product, a unique offering, right? People buy from you because of quality, experience, and proven record of success, provide value for money, good quality products, consulting projects, which nobody seems to offer, proven track record. Okay, great. All of these are great answers, by the way, right? Strong value propositions, competitive prices, reliability. Guys, this is awesome. Thank you very much for sharing all of those. Every single one of them is correct. Every single one of them is correct. Those are the reasons why people buy from you. What people really buy at a higher level than that, right? I'm sure you have the most compelling value proposition, the best price, the most reliable service, the more convenient route to market, whatever it happens to be, right? But people buy from you. People buy products and services ultimately to help them get a job done. Simple as that. And that can be anything. Anything and everything that's bought. People are buying them to get a job done. It's up to us to identify what that job is they're trying to get done at both an emotional and a functional level. Okay? So how we use this jobs to be done framework is very, very, very simple indeed, right? We understand and we appreciate and respect that people buy products and services to help them get a job done. How does that translate in the real world? Well, or how does that differ, from the real world? Well, when we think about our products and services or our solutions that we deliver to our market, we tend to think of them in conventional terms, i.e. we think about our market by their age or their race or their geographical location or their marital status or their disposable income or their job title or the amount of kids they have or their likes and dislikes. Well, with jobs to be done thinking, we don't do that. All of that is indifferent to us in part. We still look at it, we still consider it, but we, instead of focusing on the segment or the persona, we focus on the problem the customer or client would like to solve. That's it. That's all we do. Right, so, and I'm going to explain that to you in a little bit more detail in a sec. Conventionally, we tend to think about what we as a company want to sell, what we as a company can realistically develop, what we as a company can realistically get into that marketplace, what we as a company would like to see more of to improve our margins. Well, when you focus around jobs to be done thinking, we focus on understanding the reasons why consumers hire or buy a product or service. Okay, so conventional thinking is very internal and jobs to be done thinking is very external. What that leads us to reframe our product offering or reframe what it is we take to market is a couple of examples. So people don't want a 1/4 inch drill bit. Right? People want a 1/4 inch hole. Think of it in those terms. This is probably the best example out of all of these on the page here. This is probably the best example. If you are the drill bit manufacturer, you need to understand that not one of your customers wants to buy that drill bit. Not one. You might sell hundreds of thousands of those drill bits globally each year. Nobody wants to buy them at all. Nobody wants to own a 1/4 inch drill bit. All people want to be able to do is create 1/4 inch holes. And there's a world of difference between understanding the motivations that go into that. So if you think they're genuinely interested in buying a 1/4 inch drill bit, you might talk to them about how fantastic that drill bit is and what materials it's made of and what its functional specifications are and how it's different from every other 1/4 inch drill bit that's out there. They don't care. If you realize the difference, you'll be talking to them about your drill bit can give them more 1/4 inch holes than any other. Right? You can create more 1/4 inch holes in less time. You will be able to drill 1/4 inch holes for the next 10 years with this thing, right? We think about what it is they want. So people don't want TVs for the same reason. They want entertainment. They might not want entertainment. They might want to show off in front of their friends when they come around because they've got the biggest TV. These are just examples. Right? Hemant, so selling fragrance is selling love? Maybe. Selling fragrance might be selling lust. Selling fragrance might be a whole bunch of things. But yes, principally, you're right, Hemant. People don't want a set of scales. They want weight management. People don't want freight trains. They want goods transport. Yeah, so okay, so right, I'm going to stop right here, actually. So Hemant's saying, so selling fragrance is selling love. My boss taught me that just 20 years ago, just joking. No, you're absolutely right. It's absolutely right. And when I said to you right at the beginning of this class, you'll see this framework and you'll think, okay, well, that's really stupidly simple. It absolutely is. The trick comes to getting that deployed operationally and through the functions of the business so that reaches your end consumer in that same tone, right? And internally, I've said to you, we think about projects, products, services that we want to create and sell into our market. We delude ourselves in a lot of instances that our market want these. We think we can develop that and we create all these reasons in our mind why we think our audience might want it, rather than actually having a look at what our audience do want, not believing what they say, and I'll talk to you about that in a second, and then creating a product or a service that fits that solution. The vast majority of products and even businesses and brands that are set up, they're set up to potentially solve a problem or service a particular market, but end up just getting set up around the skill sets of those setting it up, and they do what they can do rather than focusing necessarily on what the consumer wants. So there's a couple of other examples on here. The other one that's particularly relevant, I think, people don't want accounting systems. They want financial tracking. So nice B2B example. People don't want a hose pipe. They want healthy plants. We need to focus on the outcome. The whole features and benefits, very, very similar to that. So if we start to understand these at a strategic level, we can start to actually think about our markets not being defined by not being defined by products or not being defined by demographics, but literally our entire market being defined by the job it is it's trying to get done. Now, I'm going to give you some really, really good examples of this. And when you start to pick under this framework in a little bit more detail, you'll start to see just what I'm talking about. So fast food chain, they really wanted to improve the sales of their milkshakes. And it's a high margin product, they want to sell more of them. So they thought, right, okay, what can we do about that? How are we going to go about doing that? Well, the first thing they tested was they focused primarily on the product. So they added more flavors, they added more toppings, they made it creamier and blah, more creamy than other fast food restaurants, milkshakes. But it didn't really do anything. The needle didn't really shift in terms of sales, so static sales. So the next thing they did is they focused on their consumers. Now, you could argue that they should have focused on their consumers first, because anything good starts with the customer, right? But we'll forgive them that for now. So what they did is they paneled their customers, their customer survey approach. And they asked them directly, what can we do to improve milkshakes? And they fed back a whole bunch of ideas on what they could do. And again, it resulted in more product changes. Launched those, rolled those out, still no significant shift in terms of sales. So then what they decided to do is take a much more granular approach to things, and they segmented their audiences. And they thought, well, actually, we've got young consumers, we've got middle-aged consumers, we've got older consumers. What is it that they want? And let's create milkshakes around those segment tastes and preferences. So again, they did that, and still no results. So they've done a whole bunch of stuff here. Tweak the product, no end. Tweak the product 3 times by taking 3 different approaches. And well-recognized and sound approaches as well, by the way. They weren't doing anything wild here, right? So after all this time, still no impact in sales. So what they did is they asked a research team to understand why people were buying their milkshakes. Now, the why is the critical part here. We need to understand the why. And there's two things that are really important. This first step is the most important and the most overlooked. In fact, if any of you have done any sort of market research in the past around a new product launch, for example, or a new business launch, or launching in a new area or anything like that, I'm pretty much willing to guarantee that this first step will have been missed in most instances. And that's the observation. What we tend to do is we tend to go straight, if we're trying to do any sort of market research or analysis, we tend to go straight into surveys and asking our customers. We very, very rarely do the observation. And observation is critical for really being able to understand the job that your consumer wanted to get done. Without the observation, it makes the interrogation or the survey or the questioning part very, very, very flimsy indeed. So the first thing they did was they observed. So a lot of customers were buying milkshake in the morning. Now, of course, they can observe just their simple sales data for that, what time are the sales made, of course. By actually observing them in purpose, in the wild, as it were, they would then see that many of them were actually only buying milkshakes, and there were a lot of them were wearing business attire. So that kind of piqued the interest of the researchers. And it's only at this point, with that observation, that you can pick these types of observations up, right? You need to be able to observe it physically in order for you to do that. Now you can do this in any environment, right? If you're a retailer, you can have people in the store observing your customers, how they move around the store, what POS they interact with, and so on. If you're online, you can use video analytics tools, things like Hotjar, for example, where you can record video sessions of a person using your website, so you can determine where they get stuck, where they spend their time, and you can actually watch those interactions in almost real time. So you can observe in almost any area. You can put people on the phone in call centers. You can have recorded meetings with your salespeople, with their clients, or whatever. There's a whole bunch of ways in which we can observe our clients, and we can get quite creative about this. First step is observation. It's a critical point. If you take one thing from this, and to really understand the true motivations behind your consumers, it's not enough to just ask them. We need to observe it. So then they interviewed them. So the first thing they did was observe. Then the researchers interviewed the audience, and they asked them, when they bought the milkshake, what were they doing? What was going through their head when they wanted to buy that milkshake? What was their real motivation for doing it? And they found out that actually the people were buying the milkshakes to make their commute less boring. That was the real motivating factor that came out of it. I've got an hour-long drive into work, or I've got an hour-long commute on the subway or train or whatever it is. actually the commute, the ideal commuting snack in the morning is a milkshake for these people, right? Especially in the warmer climates, warmer territories. Ultimately, the consumers didn't really care too much about the taste, right? As long as it tastes palatable, as long as it's enjoyable, fine, doesn't really matter beyond that. It's not about creating the best product in terms of the tastiest milkshake in the world. The consumers needed something that they could consume pretty much immediately, that would last a certain amount of time. So, it's going to last 10, 15, 20 minutes. It's going to give you that sensation of still feeling full. So it's a worthwhile snack to have in the morning. You can consume it with one hand. It's not going to make a mess. Oh, okay, if you spill it, it's going to make a right mess, but it's not going to flake or crumb. You're not going to get bits in your beard or down the front of you or whatever. And the simple fact is that milkshake did that better than donuts or bagels or candy bars or bananas or other pieces of fruit or whatever it is that you have in the morning. And this is a US example, by the way, and I know the milkshake analogy won't fly everywhere, but you'll get my point. Their competitors were not other fast food restaurants selling milkshakes in the morning. Their competitors were donuts and bananas and bagels and all the rest of it. And only when they understood that, make the commute less boring bit, that true motivation, that job the consumer was trying to get done, could they then act upon that in a real meaningful way? So they could create ad campaign. I'll give you some real simple direct-to-consumer examples in a sec, but they can create ad campaigns about try our new creamier milkshake, try our new flavored milkshakes, try this, that, and the other, and it wouldn't really make much of a difference. However, if you could target more commuters, if you could target people in transient times of day where there's, the rush hours and so on, if you could target people on their way to work during their commute, if you could target the people who do that, but maybe at other times of day and plant that seed in their head that they could make their commute less boring, more people are going to take them up on it. That's the job that they're trying to get done. I have an hour and a half commute every day into work, and then again, an hour and a half every day out of work. And I do things on that commute every day to make my commute less boring. I don't necessarily drink milkshake, but if a brand were to advertise to me because they wanted to capture my attention at those key periods, make your commute less boring with this, then yeah, of course, I'm going to listen to that. So what that enabled them was to do really good targeting campaigns around the value prop of, we will make your commute less boring. Targeted display ads, easy, fast-pay digital payment kiosks. So again, some real good strategic direction and some strategic thinking came out of it, but very much at a tactical level, which is interesting. Okay, so same fragrance. So what I want to talk about now, hopefully that milkshake analogy made sense to you all. Hopefully, with a bit of luck. If you've got any questions at any time, just post them in the comments box, or you can ask them in the Q&A box. Doesn't matter. Either one is absolutely fine with me. Oh, sorry, let me just get rid of that. Pressed on that by accident. There we go. Right. Okay, so yeah, you ask your questions whenever you want. I'm going to carry on with my example. So I want to talk about some of the reasons why our traditional approaches to things aren't necessarily the best ways of going about things. So in the milkshake example you saw earlier, they tried to add features, i.e. more flavors, make it creamier. They added different toppings and different ingredients that went into that. And I want to talk about why that isn't always the best way to go. That's not always going to be the route to success for scale or growth. Adding features doesn't necessarily mean you're adding any value. Features aren't really used in a vacuum. It has to help the user achieve a real life situational goal. Right? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this, both good and bad. So the first one I've got for you is doineedanaumbrella.com. Now this is a real niche example. I'm going to start there and I'm going to broaden it out for you in just a second. So this isn't a full-blown weather site. This isn't going to tell you what air pressure is. It isn't going to tell you the surfing reports and the wind directions and all this sort of stuff. This is just going to simply answer the question, do you need an umbrella, yes or no? Put in your zip code or your postcode and you get an answer. Simple as that. Nice and straightforward, right? You don't need to add anything else in that to be able to answer that question effectively. But that's very niched. It's very small. So how do we expand on that at a much bigger level that you could maybe relate to a little bit more? Well, there's one site that does this almost perfectly that pretty much every single one of us in this room today would have used. And that's Google, right? You've got a brand, you've got a box, and you've got 2 buttons. There's like 4 things. That's it. It's a whole lot. Now, some of you may not remember the early days of the browsers and the search engine, but they used to pack those home screens of those search engines full of stuff. There'd be news on there, there'd be image feeds, there'd be stock tickers, there'd be weather updates, there'd be random selections of content that was just rammed onto this homepage because they thought, you know what, if we can stick all of this stuff in, people are going to be keener and more interested to keep coming back. And simply that's not true, is it? Because we don't go to these websites and search engines for that sort of stuff. We go to them because we want to search for something. We've got our own information that we want to get to. So you just need to make it super slick and easy for me to do that. And that's what Google have majored on through the branding and the brand presence, through the amount of widget or content areas on that homepage, right the way through to the search results themselves, making sure they serve the most relevant, useful information they can to the user, which keeps them coming back for more and more. Now, if we have a look at the converse of that, you've got something like perhaps Evernote. Evernote was, I think it was one of the first, if not the first, kind of ubiquitous note-taking applications out there. You could take a note on your mobile device, and you could get that on then your laptop or your iPad or whatever it was. And it was a way for you to store and collect everything in one place. Really great functional app, awesome. And then over a number of years, they started bloating that software with all sorts of features and functionality. And when, after a few years, they looked at it, the vast majority of their user base, I don't know the exact figures, I can't remember the exact figures, it was something like 95% of their user base were only using 2% of the total pieces of functionality inside the application. So that goes to show that adding all those features didn't necessarily add any extra value to the end user. And that's really costly for business, because not only are you taking the risk of investing money and effort and time in areas that aren't benefiting you, you're losing all of that time keeping your customers happy, right? Because all the time you invest in features that aren't really impressing your customers give them more chance to find a software platform that has got features that they do value. Right? So it's a double kind of jeopardy. So again, so those are some examples of why focusing on features isn't always the way to go. And again, even focusing on products, why focusing on product doesn't always work, because being better than your direct competitors doesn't mean you're being good. It doesn't even mean that you're relevant anymore. The goal of the user defines who your competitors are. So if I give you an example of that, in fact, I'll give you one right now. Odeon, the cinema chain here in the UK and in Europe, all over the place. And they've got these big multiplex theatres, where they're showing 10, 15, 20 movies at a time. Huge pieces of real estate, often in town centres and retail parks and out-of-town shopping centres and that sort of stuff. Huge pieces of real estate. Now, if I'd have asked you the question, what industry are Odeon in? What do you think? So you can let me know in that chat box. What industry are the Odeon in? Are they in the rental? No, so this is like a movie theatre, right? So yeah, okay, you can kind of class, it's cinema, right? So they're in the movie theatre business. Yeah, this is a little bit more like it. So Canal's saying entertainment, Andrew's saying leisure, Cheryl, entertainment, Max saying movies. Yeah, they're in the entertainment. They're not in the movie business. They're in the entertainment business. Because you've got movie buffs, right? People who genuinely go to the movies all of the time because they are movie enthusiasts. Yes, of course, they have that market, and I'm not trying to argue about that market. But the vast majority of people who go to the movies aren't movie lovers, right? These aren't people who have to see every release that comes out and real hardcore fans, right? The vast majority of people who go to the Odeon and cinemas are looking for a good night out, want to spend some time with friends, maybe they're taking a date with them, maybe they're taking the kids out or whatever, right? Some people, hardcore movie fan, yes, they will always have that audience, but that would account for maybe 5-10% of their total audience. The vast majority of everybody else is they're just looking to be entertained. So who are their competitors? Is it other movie chains? Or is it Angry Birds? Is it Fortnite? Is it soft play areas? Is it restaurants, bars, cafes, arcades, VR environments, esports arenas? It's all of these things. It's absolutely all of these things. And that's why we're starting to notice the trend, certainly here in the UK. And I've not seen it much actually outside of the UK, but that's probably more to do with my ignorance than it not happening. You've got movie chains now that are closing some of the screens inside their movie theatre, and they're converting those screens into esports arenas or bigger arcade environments, areas for the bar, areas for coffee shops, restaurants, bowling alleys even. Because they've finally realized that actually we're not just in the movie business here, we're in the entertainment business. We're trying to compete with Netflix, we're trying to compete with Amazon Prime, we're trying to compete with all of these other things that keep people entertained on an evening or during the day or whatever it is. And we're starting to see that more and more and more. They're using that real estate, not just for movie screens, they're using it for all sorts. So again, think about that yourself. What is your customer? What business are you really in? Right? What business are you really in? Are you in the automotive business, or are you in the I'm going to show off and show my car as a status symbol business? Think about that. It's important. Okay, so why can't we focus on user claims? Now, this is probably one of the hardest ones to wrap your head around. Not conceptually. When I explain it to you, you'll get it straight away, of course. But when you have to deploy it, it's hard to keep in front of your mind. So why can't we really believe what the customer says they want? And there's a number of reasons for this. The first one is the fact that they think in terms of their existing solutions. They don't think about what's the best solution for my problem. They think about what's the best available solution for my problem. And the best example I've got of that is Henry Ford. Among the very famous things he's quoted as having said, one of them was, if I'd have asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Of course, they didn't think, oh yes, well, I'd love a motor car. Motor cars didn't exist before Henry Ford put them on the road. So people don't think about what actually it is they want to do or how they want to do it. They think about what's currently available to them. Although MP3 players were around for quite a few years before the iPod was launched, nobody really wanted one at scale. A bunch of people had MP3 players, but it wasn't that big a deal. It didn't really dent the Discman business too hard, right? Until Steve Jobs told us we wanted 1,000 songs in our pocket. Right? And the iPod was cool. And the iPod was born. So we only think in terms of our existing solutions. We don't really think in terms of what we're capable of or what we could have. And if you are a business that operates at that cutting edge and you very much your market is early adopters, that's something you've got to be aware of. Okay, so why focusing on user claims doesn't always work? Another reason why we can't really trust our customers to come up with all the answers for us. And this is probably the biggest one. So that one makes sense to everybody. They get that. Oh yeah, we don't really think about that. Oh, I wish I'd have thought of that. We get it. But not believing our customers when we ask them something is something that we can find quite difficult to understand. And this is probably one of the biggest reasons why I have problems with focus groups and surveys, because they often give misleading information. I'm going to give you lots of examples of that because I think it's really important that we understand it. So, when you ask a consumer something, they give you an answer, and that answer is what we call a stated preference, i.e. they've said that, or they've said they would do that, they've said they feel this way. But when you observe, and it comes back to the observation thing being really important, when you observe a customer do something, they have what we call a revealed preference. So they may say one thing, but they often do another. And that's the big downfall in focus groups and customer survey pieces. It doesn't always give you an accurate reflection of the world. So I've got some examples of that for you here as well. So Ryanair, a low-cost airline carrier in Europe, they are constantly being moaned about in social media. If you ask anybody, Yisa, actually, I'm just going to stop there. Yisa is saying, users don't always know what they want until it becomes available. That's absolutely bang on for my first point with Henry Ford. You didn't know you wanted it until you see it. You didn't know you needed it until you see it. It's what consumerism is based on, I suppose. This one's more around saying one thing and doing another. So if you speak to anybody about flying to a city not far away, and you say you're going to fly with Ryanair, they're like, oh no, I'm not going to get a Ryanair flight. Oh no, I don't like Ryanair. Oh no, Ryanair are cheap and nasty. Oh, Ryanair this. Oh, Ryanair that. But when it comes to it, no, they're either going to spend €300 on a plane ticket, or they're going to spend €20 on a plane ticket. A lot of people are going to choose the €20 option, which is Ryanair. It's just the way it happens. And that can be borne out factually, actually. So although Ryanair don't have a great reputation or great social presence, or there's not much great word of mouth about Ryanair, their sales, their flight numbers are up year on year on year on year. And they've been one of the most profitable airlines in the world for the last 10 years. So they must have been doing something right. Somebody must have been flying with them, right? You can't not be. And again, it's the same in the US. I've been familiar with a couple of studies recently, actually, with a poll around religion, and asking the people in the US, how often do you go to church? And if you believed the numbers of people that said every Sunday, there isn't enough churches in the country to house them all. It just it isn't true. It's just not factual. Loads of people say they go to church every Sunday, but very few do in comparison. And again, the same in the beer industry. If you ask the American public, and there's a poll just done recently about this, if you ask them how often they drink Budweiser, what's their primary beer, is Budweiser. But if you look at the sales figures for Bud, Bud couldn't manufacture the amount of beers that people say they drink. They just couldn't do it. So again, it's that stated and revealed preference, and we have to be sceptical a little bit. Healthily sceptical, I refer to it as. Give you another couple of examples about that. Another poll recently. I'm going into great detail on this because it's a really important part of this session. We can't blindly believe what our customers tell us. We cannot do that. It's irresponsible to the board and the stakeholders and shareholders of the business if we do that. So a Wall Street Journal NBC poll was saying that Americans hate social media. In fact, in every group, they were saying that it divides us rather than it brings us together. It wastes our time rather than uses our time well. It spreads lies and falsehoods as opposed to spreading news and information, and it spreads unfair attacks and rumours rather than holding public figures and companies accountable. Right? Yes, 70% of Americans say they access social media every day, or 70% of Americans access social media at least once a day. So we can see there's a big disconnect there. So if you want the truth, forget what people say and look at what they do. That's going to be the most telling. So it's important that we understand that. And on a semi-related note, it's a very similar thing about data and privacy. Very, very few people trust Amazon, Google, the federal government, or Facebook with their data. Yet willingly and unwillingly give bucket loads of their data away on a daily basis when they use these platforms. So there's a very big disconnect. And I think ultimately this can be summed up most eloquently by what probably is the father of modern day marketing, which is David Ogilvy. If you're not familiar with Ogilvy, I suggest at least reading one of Ogilvy's books. Although they were written many years ago now, they're still super relevant. Even I think in some cases even more relevant than they were at the time. But he's very famously quoted as having said, "Consumers don't think how they feel, they don't say what they think, and they don't do what they say." And I think that sums it up far more eloquently than I ever could. Okay, so why focusing on segments doesn't always work? Well, this is an interesting one, because just because the fact that you're 18 to 35-year-old with a college degree doesn't mean or doesn't cause you to buy a product or a service. It may be correlated with that, but it doesn't cause it. And I think when we look at segments, we confuse causation and correlation. There might be a correlation between these people buying your products, but it's not the cause of it. And I think if we focus on the cause, we can very often do a better job. So when it comes to creating our personas and our segments or our avatars, whatever it is that we call them, we generally tend to map out things like this. But I'm going to give you a perfectly good example here of where this falls down. Right? I myself. 39-year-old, married, professional, excuse me, with 2 children, relatively good disposable income. Right? Now, if I want to go out for a meal with my wife and we want a date night, it wants to be nice, spend some time together, something special, we're going to book an expensive, quiet, high-end restaurant, right? Let's say. Because I'm 39, married with 2 kids, doesn't mean that's the cause of me booking that restaurant. Equally, if I go to coming back from the beach and the kids are in the car and we just want something quick and easy to eat on the way back home, stop off somewhere, eat, and carry on our journey, we'll go to a low-end, cheap pizza restaurant or takeout restaurant or something like that. Who I am, how many kids I've got, whether I'm married or not, whether I earn a lot of money or don't earn a lot of money, or whether I have 17 cars or one car or whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's all dependent on the job I'm trying to get done. So what job am I trying to get done when I'm trying to feed the kids and get them fed before we carry on our long journey home? What job am I trying to get done when I book a fancy, expensive restaurant in a nice part of town? Right? Major on that. Don't major on who I am. Major on what my motivation is. Major on what my job is I'm trying to get done. Identify what job a lot of people are trying to get done that you can cater for by talking directly to them. I'll give you some examples of how we do this now. So we can categorize it either functionally or emotionally. Now, we are not functional and objective people, right? We don't make decisions rationally. Very, very few decisions are made rationally. We're emotional people. We make our decisions with emotions all of the time. If we weren't emotional, then none of us would smoke, because we all know smoking is bad for us, yet a lot of us still smoke. If we weren't emotional, we wouldn't eat donuts if we were on a diet trying to lose weight, right? Because rationally, that doesn't make any sense. I'm on a diet, I'm trying to lose weight, yet I'm still eating this donut. That doesn't compute, right? We are emotional people. So if we just focus on the functional criteria when we're trying to promote or market or communicate with our audience in any way about our products and services, we're missing a huge trick. So it's about the intrinsic and non-intrinsic value of something. So here's a watch, right? The intrinsic value of that watch is what? It tells the time. That's the intrinsic value. That's the functional criteria. Did I buy this watch because I want to know the time? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But if I concentrate on the functional bit, then you would be talking to me about it keeps the best time in the world. It does this. It's the easiest way to tell the time. You know, you can get, I don't know, text message updates of what time it is. I don't know, whatever. You just focus on the functional. No, I buy into the brand. I buy into the emotional, subjective criteria, and they're broken down into two areas. How does it make me feel? Personally, I'm a big watch enthusiast. I have a collection of watches. So I bought this because I like the way it makes me feel when I wear this watch. I feel, okay, that's great. That's a good quality timepiece. It looks good. It's beautiful. I really like it for me. Right? It makes me feel good. That's the personal bit. The social bit is how I believe I'm perceived by others when using the product. So that's less of an impact for me. Certainly the personal ones are more one for me, but socially in this instance, it's a nice watch. It's by a very famous Swiss watchmaker, and that's in some cultures the timepiece that you have is a sign of affluence, or it's a sign of a status symbol or something like that. And like I say, it's less important for me. There's far better watches for that out there. But again, that's important. So I'll give you another example, not the watch this time. We'll focus on the iPod. When the iPod first came out, the functional criteria is I get 1,000 songs in my pocket. Wow! I can travel with 1,000 songs anytime I want. The emotional criteria is personal. How do I feel about that? Well, actually, if I'm traveling, like today, I'm going down into London tonight. I'm traveling now, so I've got, of course, my phone, my headphones on. But let's say it's an iPod, back in the days of iPod. I've got my iPod with me. It means I can listen to calming work when I'm working on the train. So calming music, sorry, to keep me calm and focused while I'm working on the train. I can listen to some of my favourite songs that get me excited about the night out that I'm about to have. I'm going to go to the gym when I get to the hotel, so I can listen to some fast-paced music to keep my momentum up and get me excited. So there's emotional feelings around that associated with all that music, but that's very personal to me. The social element of that, does anybody remember when the iPod was first launched? They had those white headphones. Nobody had white headphones at the time, right? Yeah, there we go, right? Who's just said this? Yis has just said this. When iPods first came out, the white headphones was a bit of a status quo. It absolutely was. Uncategorically, it was a status symbol. Those white headphones were so cool. Everybody wanted them. Status symbol, absolutely. So if I was a bit of a show-off back then, I could be just buying the iPod because I can associate with me being cool because I have the latest gadget. Screw whether it actually helps me listen to music, and forget about how I feel about it. If I've got those white headphones in, everybody will know that I've got the latest tech, and that makes me cool, and people will think great things of me. Maybe if you're motivated by that. I'm not saying everybody feels this way. I'm saying that some people could feel this way. And in fact, it was so cool that there was increased levels of muggings in the street when people saw. I remember nodding at strangers in greetings just because we both had white headphones. See, part of a culture, right? This is so important. That people were being mugged in the street for their iPods, and people knew they got a $400 or $500 iPod in their pocket because they got white headphones in their ears. Now it's less relevant. Everyone's got white headphones and whatever, you know. But you can see the difference between a functional. You didn't buy the MP3 player because it played MP3s. You could buy MP3 players anywhere and everywhere. Yeah, they were still relatively expensive, but Sony were doing them and Panasonic were doing them and OEM manufacturers were doing them. You bought the iPod for the emotional criterion because actually it's a really slick, nice, sexy device to use, and people will think you're cool or whatever. So how do we do this? How do we encapsulate that, right? How do we really get to the heart of this moment and understanding for our consumers? Well, we do it with three things. We have a situation, we have a motivation, and we have an expected outcome. So I want you to put yourself in your customer's shoes and think of this. It shouldn't be anything to do with your business, by the way. It should be purely to do with it. So when is the situation, I want to is the motivation, and the expected outcome is the so I can. Let me give you some examples. So when I travel, that's the first point, situation. I want to take a large selection of music. That's the second point, the motivation. So I can be entertained. That's the entertainment is the expected outcome. 3 parts. So if you're in the B2B world, when I do my taxes, I want to reduce the time it takes so I can get back to work. When I commute to work, I want a snack that keeps me occupied or makes my commute less boring so I don't get bored. All right? See how this applies, just these 3 statements. Situation, motivation, expected outcome. And I'm going to dive into one of these in a bit more detail just to illustrate the point. So when I learn the guitar, I want to master it quick so I can impress my friends. And when I look for investors, I want to ensure a good cultural fit so I can still run my business my way. Now, let's have a look at the guitar one. If I'm a guitar instructor and I don't understand this, I've not been familiar with the jobs to be done statement. I'm not familiar with the framework, and I'm marketing and advertising myself based on what I think is important to my customers. So when I'm creating my ads, I'm going to talk about me being a guitar instructor for 25 years and a level X ninja guitar instructor and fully insured and 5,000 students done something with me or whatever, right? I'm just going to talk about me basically. Now, these are just examples, of course, on here, but let's assume that actually the guitar student wants to learn songs quickly so he can impress his friends. Maybe he wants to impress a girl. Maybe he wants to play around a campfire. Maybe she wants to pick up the guitar and jam to rebel. Maybe she wants to join a band, you know, have a sense of camaraderie in a band and play the guitar, but she's got to impress her friends, right? Well, if the guitar instructor knows that, he could simply say, learn a 5-set song list in 7 days or less, or your money back. That's all he needs to say. Because you can master it quick and you can impress your friends. That's it. Now, I'm not saying that every person wants to learn guitar to impress their friends. I'm saying there's a functional reason why you want to learn it, and there is an emotional reason. And that emotional reason is broken into how does that make you feel, i.e. what do you get from it, and how do others perceive you when you're doing it. Right? So I've got to be honest, I play guitar, and there's a little part of me on the inside that thinks, actually, now this is really sad to admit, but I'm going to admit it, right? There's a little part of me on the inside, not a lot, but a little part that says, actually, I play guitar, and I think that's pretty cool. You know, maybe people think I'm a bit cooler because I play guitar. Right? Now, that'll be more and less for some people, but it's that emotional understanding, right? What is it that we get emotionally? How can we leverage that? Okay, so if you've got any questions, we're coming up towards the end, actually, guys. We're going to be finished 5 minutes or so early. If you've got any questions, now is the time to get your questions into me. I'm going to run through some resources now. I'll be happy to answer some questions before we finish off our session. So some resources. So you've got the innovator's dilemma and you've got the innovator's solution. Excuse the amazon.co.uk links. Obviously, I'm based here in the UK. You can get them from pretty much every major bookstore. I'm not affiliated with Amazon anyway, so I don't care if you buy them or don't. You know, it's fine, whatever. Totally up to you. But the innovator's dilemma talks a lot about the jobs to be done framework, and in fact, there's a lot more information about that milkshake case study that I gave you at the beginning of the session. Both books are written by Clayton Christensen, and very much worthwhile listening to what he has to say. There's a really good article on LinkedIn actually around linking jobs to be done to strategy. It's very much in line with what you guys are going through right now, of course. And there's a video there for YouTube. I think it's about a 20-30 minute video, something like that, about putting jobs to be done into practice. So like I said, the jobs to be done framework is dead simple. What job are your customers trying to do when they hire or buy your product? That's it. That's the framework. It's dead simple. Implementing it, keeping it at the forefront of your communication strategy, your marketing strategy, your service strategy is really quite complex, and that can take a little bit of thought and bringing people together across the enterprise in order to be able to deliver on it. Okay, you will get a copy of the presentation, right? You are going to get a copy of that. I've already sent it over to support, so they'll be sending that on to you. Okay, so who's asking me this? Heman's saying, can you think of a statement when I want to join online course at Columbia University so I can be knowledgeable about digital service for the rest of the enterprise? Oh, so, okay, so you want me to give a, sorry, I've rattled through that, guys. I should have said it more clearly, but you want me to give a jobs to be done statement for essentially emeritus, right? So what do you guys, the students, what goes through your mind when you decide to book a course or going through that process of booking? Again, it could be a whole bunch of things. When I take an online course, I want to have it a recognized certification so I can expect to get a better, so I can get a better job at the other end of it, or I can progress my career, or I can get a pay rise or a promotion, or find a job in a higher hierarchical level than what I'm at currently. I just made that up off the top of my head. I'm sure you could shrink it down into something much more palatable, but hopefully you saw that I said it from absolutely the angle of the student. It was a student that was highly motivated by getting recognised for it and earning more money as a result of it. But that was just one example. Hopefully that was good enough for you guys. Okay, brilliant. Any other questions that we've got before I leave you to catch my train? This formula plays excellent on service and products, but how about business models? It's no different. Your business model will be a collection of frameworks, revenue model, your cost models, the customer management models, all of that sort of stuff. This just sits alongside that. This is just purely what jobs do your customers do or what jobs they're trying to do when they hire or buy your product. And you can build the whole business model around that. I want it to be more emotionally tangible, like the one example you mentioned on an earlier page. Herman, you wanted it to be more emotionally tangible. Okay, so it could be somebody who's trying to get a step up at work and they're trying to differentiate with themselves between their colleagues. That's a very emotional one. If I'm going to get promoted in the next 12 months, I'm going to be against this guy next to me, and you know, we're pretty much neck and neck. This would give me a significant advantage over him, and I could outflank him a little bit with that. Yisa, chapter 6 of How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen covers the milkshake example as well. There you go. Okay, brilliant. Has anybody got any more questions for me before we wrap up today? If you haven't, I've had an absolute blast talking to you guys today. I've really enjoyed it. Hopefully you've enjoyed it too. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully I've given you some food for thought. I've really enjoyed talking to you guys today, and you've participated loads, which has made my job super duper easy. Because when I don't get any participation, it's like talking into a tin can. It's a bit like being a radio DJ. Apart from the fact that you can see me and I'm looking at you, so that's even harder. But no, I've really enjoyed myself. So thank you very, very much indeed. If any of you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. You're more than welcome, everyone. I'm getting some really lovely comments here saying thank you, and it's great class and stuff. So it's great. Thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate that. And I appreciate the hard work and efforts you're going through on the course. I haven't been course leader for this course for quite a while, and now just doing the guest lecturing. I know how challenging your course is, and I know it's designed to be that way, and I know you guys are putting in loads of effort. So I just want to wish you the very best of luck with the rest of your course. LinkedIn is asking for an email address to connect, so you can have my email address. Hang on a second. Just trying to learn how to type it then whilst talking at the same time. I'm not very good at multitasking. So I've already screwed it up twice already. There you go. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. It takes me a little bit of time to respond to stuff, but thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I wish you all the very best. I'm off to get my train. Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of your day.